Now you may remember that we also have an elements file specification here. So I'm going to quickly walk through this file to give you an idea of what it's all about. Now this is a document that you use basically to plan out the content of a conceptual artifact, a knowledge resource that you're building, right? As usual, there is a meta section here in which you can record information about the document itself. Here you can make a note of the problems addressed by the artifact. So normally when you're creating a document, you're addressing certain problems. This is sometimes useful to make a note of it. Okay, what problem do I want to solve in writing this document? I've actually have a repeat here of the to-do for cases where I don't want to rely on the external to-do plan file. When I'm writing a document that is some complexity and novelty to me, I sometimes make a note of the model publication. This basically, it's a publication that's similar to the document that I'm writing. The title, okay, so this is a placeholder for the title. And when I'm writing a book, I find that finding the title is a bit of a challenge. So I keep a track of the current title and provisional titles and previous titles, and sometimes there are quite a few. If the document calls for an opening quotation, you can make a note of them here. There are a section on related chapters. You can make a note of what is original and new in this document. So, you know, if you're writing a PhD thesis, for instance, or any document really, you need to know what is new about what you're writing. A lot of what you're writing will already exist in the literature, but typically there's some original element. You can make a note of that here. And if you don't make a note of it, you should at least have an idea in your head of what's new about the document. There's a section here to record the rationale and the justification, the importance or relevance that you're going to communicate to the author. Keep in mind that in the plan file that we discussed earlier, there are similar constraints that you use to drive your own knowledge creation. Now, this is a section here for the thesis of the document, okay? And keep in mind, if you're doing a presentation, you know, at most 3 main ideas. Okay, so these are basically the major claims of your document. Now, every document or similar knowledge resource typically contains an argument. Okay, so this is a section where you can summarize your argument and keep track of counter arguments to anticipate, rebut, and deal with. Now, here's a section which I'm going to expand, which deals with miscellaneous topics that figure in a document. So when you're creating a document, you might just want to make a quick note of a number of topics that you want to cover. So these can get expanded here. Here are some questions to answer to keep in mind. You might want to keep a note of the summary. Principles is another kind of information that we talk about in a document. Sometimes when writing a document, it's just a good idea to make a note of the various concepts that you want to cover. Minor claims, there may be examples that you want to use in the document. You can put them here, or you can write them in line. Say if I'm in here and I've expanding something and I want to say, well, this is an example, then I can make a note of it here. And later, if I want to retrieve the examples that I would like to deal with in this document, I can quickly do so by using the handy search tool here. When writing a document, a scholarly document in particular, you often have other works that you want to refer to, and this is a place to indicate that. It's not a bibliography, it's just, for instance, I might want to talk about the computer revolution and philosophy. Bang, so I'd write that. If you so choose, you could put the draft here. I prefer to include the draft in a separate document, and that's why we've got an actual template for that. Supporting materials, figures, cartoons, tables, references, all of these things. As you're fleshing out a document, you might want to keep track of them in this thinking file. This is another scratch pad for just raw thinking about something. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes one wants to keep old information, just don't want to delete it. Research shows that people really don't like deleting information, so you can shove that old information here. And if there are communications you want to keep track of, you can do this here. But keep in mind that I showed you that there's a folder in which you can store communications as well. Knowledge is socially created, and therefore it's important to treat communications with the level of importance that they deserve. Now, looking over this file, I just want to make sure it's clear that this is not an outline. We have a separate file for the outline. This is a thinking document. It's essentially a document that contains the elements of a specification for a knowledge resource that you're creating.